Welcome back to Viewpoint. I'm Jim Zogby. My next guest is Allan Lichtman. He's political historian, presidential scholar, and distinguished professor of history at American University here in Washington, D.C. Author of 7 books, including The Keys to the White House, a surefire guide to predicting the next president. His system has correctly predicted the outcomes of every U.S. presidential election since 1984. And you know, I've had you on the show since we started in 1992, way back when, and you've been each time doing this the year before the election.
That's right.
And you've been right.
It's your influence, Jim.
No, it's actually quite remarkable. I remember in years when I just wasn't sure how it was going to come out, and you'd get it the year before. I'd go back and look at your stuff, and you'd have it. For our viewers, the model, how did you develop it, and how's it work? Describe to them. I can vouch from the show perspective, you've always gotten it right the year out, but how did you develop it, and how have you used it since you first began using it in the 80s?
Like all good ideas, of course, I'd love to say I developed it through long hours of contemplation, years in the library, but to quote the late, great Richard Nixon, that would be wrong. Purely by accident I developed this. I met at Caltech in 1981 a Russian geophysicist, Volodya Kylo-Sporak, who was the world's leading expert, get this, in earthquake prediction. And he said, let's collaborate. And I said, no, I don't want to do earthquakes. Nobody cares about that in Washington. He said, no, we're going to use the methods of earthquake prediction to predict American presidential elections. And so we reconceptualized presidential elections, not as Reagan versus Carter or Republicans versus Democrats, but in geophysical terms, stability and upheaval.
The tectonic plates, if you will, of politics and social and economic realities.
Precisely right. Either they're stable or they move and you get an earthquake. An earthquake meaning, of course, the party in power is tossed out. And to give this specificity, we looked at every American presidential election from 1860, the horse and buggy days of Lincoln and Douglas, to 1980. And we came up with 13 key factors based on the theory that presidential elections are basically smart referenda by voters on the performance of the party holding the White House. And we came up with 13 keys, true-false questions, that retrospectively could account for the results in the popular vote, of course, because it's a national system, of every election from 1860 to 1980. And the keys have never changed. We first applied them to predicting the election of 1984. First thing I published on the keys, aside from technical pieces, was in the Washingtonian magazine in April 1982, 2.5 years more before the election, predicting the re-election of Ronald Reagan in the midst of the Great Recession of 1982. And I've since done that for 7 consecutive elections, as you say, a year and sometimes even a year, even longer ahead of time.
Now, one of the charges is that they look at the keys and they say, this is subjective. Is it subjective, or are there objective realities you point to?
It's a little bit of both. I'm an historian. Historians make judgments all the time. You can't eliminate judgments from human behavior. This is a human system, but the judgments are very well defined that you have to make. Of course, hopefully all your viewers will go get my book, The Keys to the White House, and each key is carefully defined. For example, third party. You know, what's a significant third party? We define it very specifically as a third party that you would anticipate getting 5% of the vote based on the rule of halves. That is, you take the top polling of the third party and you cut it in half. Something John knows very well. You know, what happens in the polling booth is people decide, you know, I love Ross Perot, but he can't win. So even something like third party, a significant third party is very well defined. So is a significant contest for the incumbent party nomination is very well defined in terms of delegate votes. So they may look subjective, and there is some judgment involved, but it's very carefully constrained.
So let's take a look at the keys. There's 13 of them, and they're not personality driven, except in a couple of questions.
A couple of cases.
But the issue is that the party, if the incumbent party, the party that currently holds the White House, has 8 keys, they can be expected to win the next election.
It's that simple. Any 8.
So now let's look and see. We'll go each one. We'll keep score. You keep score at home, and I'll keep score here. Let's do the first one. The first one is a party mandate. Does the incumbent party hold more seats In Congress, after the last election, after the midterm election.
Obviously false.
So
that's one down.
That's one down.
Remember, you need 8 trues.
Right.
That's one false.
The next one, contest. There has to be no serious contest in the incumbent presidential nominating process.
Clearly true.
So Obama has one key.
Yes.
The next is incumbency. The incumbent party candidate is the sitting president. It's
Clearly
an obvious
true.
one. The next one, third party. There's no significant third party or independent candidate.
At the moment, that's true. There's no third party whatsoever out there.
So that would be 3, but it could change.
Keys can change, but they don't
Okay.
change. It's not so easy as you guys were just talking about to run a third-party campaign in this country.
Let's go to short-term economy. The economy is not in a recession during the election campaign.
Well, we're not certain about that, but it doesn't look that way. The economy seems to be improving, so I'd give that one a true.
Long-term economy, real per capita economic growth during the term in office equals or exceeds the mean growth during the previous 2 terms. He gets a thumbs down on that one.
Thumbs down on that one. That's a false.
Okay, that's a false.
That's one everyone harps on, the sluggish economy.
Policy change. The incumbent president has affected major change in national policy.
Clearly, very significant changes from the Bush administration at every level.
Now, this works for you and against you, but you're judging that health care right now, which is viewed by the public as a whole as kind of, they're sort of split on that.
Right.
You view that as something that ultimately rebounds to his favor.
You have a record to run on. It doesn't say popular policy change. That's why the keys are carefully defined. So that one is true.
Okay, that's 5. Then social unrest. There's no sustained social unrest during his term.
Nothing like the 1960s or the Reconstruction.
So you don't mean Tea Party or
No.
Occupy Wall Street. You mean
people really thinking their society's coming apart.
like a riot, like the ones we had after King's assassination,
Exactly.
etc.
So that one is true.
Scandal. The incumbent administration is untainted by major scandal.
And again, the definition of that is it has to hit the president and there has to be bipartisan recognition of scandal.
We mean Watergate.
Watergate, the Clinton impeachment.
Right.
So that one is true.
Foreign or military failure. The incumbent president suffers no major military failure in foreign military affairs.
No Pearl Harbor, no Bay of Pigs, so that one is true.
Military success. The incumbent president achieves a major success in foreign military policies.
He's got 2 with Gaddafi and bin Laden in Libya.
Does it matter that this is the record to run on? Not
The record, and it's got to be a big, splashy public thing like these were.
Incumbent charisma. The incumbent party candidate is a charismatic or national hero.
You know, that's a toughie. That's probably the most judgmental of them all. You got to be a Teddy Roosevelt, a Ronald Reagan, a Franklin Roosevelt. I thought Obama had it during the campaign.
In 2008, you said he did.
Yeah, but I think he's lost it.
He's lost it now.
So I give that one a false.
And then challenger charisma. The challenging party candidate is not a charismatic or national hero. Sorry, I'm not going to laugh at that, but I mean, we don't quite have that one going.
No, so that
right.
one is clearly a true.
And the total number is?
It's 9 or 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably 10.
You want to give me a call out there, please do. The numbers are up on the screen. If you're calling from overseas, the number is 001-202-420-5665. Here in the U.S., it's 1-202-420-5730. Which of these might change?
Well, we talked about third party. I think that's the one most likely to change. But as you know, it's monumentally difficult to run a third party campaign in this country. The last candidate to get 5% was Ross Perot in 1996, who was a second-time candidate. Very tough to get the money, to get the attention, to get the credibility. Now, there could always be disasters abroad. You can't control necessarily events abroad, so that could conceivably change, and the economy could go into a recession. But remember, he's got a couple of key cushion here. He's at 10 keys. He needs 8. So he could drop a couple more keys and still win this.
So as of December 15th, Allan Lichtman is saying...
Not Alan Keyes, please.
Wrong Allan. Allan Lichtman is saying Barack Obama wins the White House.
Absolutely, and I've been saying this for a while.
Okay. Scandal and social unrest. How those still could occur, but we don't have anything like them yet.
Extremely unlikely.
Extremely unlikely.
You got to understand, these kinds of things don't usually happen a few months before the election. It takes a long time for a scandal to brew.
Now, one of the attacks on your thesis came from a New York Times guy saying you don't emphasize the economy enough, and that's the thing that's on most voters' minds. Your response?
My response is the economy is important, but it's not the only thing. The economy is in there, but it's the big picture that voters... Look at 1968. Democrats should have won in a landslide if it was only the economy, but the Vietnam War, the social unrest, the Democratic Party falling apart.
Let's go to Colorado for a call. Caller? Hello?
Yes, I'm looking at politicsone.com, and there's several third parties here, and I think with the Occupy group, we may carry the third party a little more on with the Green Party. And last time Cynthia McKinney ran, this time we have Kent Mesplay. I think there's going to be a lot of people who don't want a war criminal, as Obama has been, for president.
Who'd you vote for?
He's been torturing, you know. And
who'd you vote for in 2008?
I voted in the last election. I voted for Cynthia McKinney and the Green Party.
Okay, thank you. There are always many candidates running as third-party candidates. You discount that? What is the threshold of a third party?
It's a high threshold. It's 5%. And as I said, even Ralph Nader, you know, a major national figure, couldn't get to 5%. Didn't even get that close. He was 2.7. Last one was Ross Perot. And before that, John Anderson.
That was the thing that ultimately did George Bush in.
In 1992.
1992 was the
yes,
19%.
That was the sixth key.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to, so these folks running, the Libertarians who'll get a 1% and the Green Party that'll get 1 or 2% or whatever, unless you have a party that goes over the 5% threshold,
they don't count.
They don't count.
Not that they don't count for significant ideas. I love these guys, but they don't count for my system. They got to understand this is an internally consistent, contained system.
So in other words, the tremor that they cause is not felt on the surface.
That's correct.
Okay.
You got it exactly right.
Let's go to Oregon for a call. Caller? Yes.
Hello.
Hi, your question.
Hello. Yes, my question is, how come your guest doesn't think the Occupy Wall Street movement and the movements throughout the world, the globe at this particular time, isn't social unrest equivalent at least to the 60s?
Yeah, I'm wondering that myself. The Time magazine says this is the year of protest, and there are these upheavals. The Tea Party certainly was a disruptive force. The Occupy Wall Street is there and is still operating. Is it not? How do you judge the threshold? And is that not a subjective call?
No, because you judge it in terms of when you've made the call before. And for example, you had huge anti-abortion protests in the 1970s, much bigger by orders of magnitude than anything we've seen today. Millions of people out in the street. We didn't turn the key then because it wasn't threatening the society to come apart. There are always protests. Tea Party protests weren't threatening the society to come up. They were very peaceful, you know. You might not agree with the Tea Party. The Occupy Wall Street is, you know, more of an activist protest, but it's very tiny.
Let's go to Nevada.
And I don't mean to disparage any of these protests. I'm just talking about it, how it operates within my system.
So if we use the model again of the earthquake,
right?
The plates are always moving.
Always.
But the question is the movement sufficient enough to cause a tremor on the ground, and a ground tremor that is actually felt and alters the landscape? And so this is an incumbency that, in order to be threatened, has to have 6 keys work against it. And you're only seeing right now 3. And even if you do have social unrest and scandal,
wouldn't do it.
That only brings you up to 5. And it's not enough. Let's go to Nevada for a call. Caller?
Hi.
Your question.
My question is about the election and the Republican Party. I believe they're going to hand Obama a re-election because the Republicans are not giving us anybody credible that we would even want to sit down and entertain. And Obama's really no different than the Republicans.
Let me do that one.
Well, that would affect the 13th key. I'm not judging these candidates in terms of their substance. I'm simply saying the Republicans don't have a Ronald Reagan, a John F. Kennedy, a Franklin Roosevelt, a truly electrifying figure that makes people transcend the humdrum of their lives and think bigger. You know,
as Obama did in 2008.
As Obama did in 2008, but doesn't do now.
Last call from New Jersey. Caller?
Yes, Dr. Zogby, nice to see you again.
Thank you.
Sammy Murphy. I wanted to know what your thought about this arrogant and ignorant statement made by Newt Gingrich that the Palestinians did not exist. There is no such a thing as.
Yeah, well, listen, Sammy, I wrote about that a lot on our website. I wrote my article about it last week. I'm going to answer it instead of Allan. It was, look, the speaker has a penchant for making big statements that are backed up by very little knowledge, and this was another one of them. It was very hurtful, it was very stupid, and it was very wrong. And I think he's paying a price for it. It would be delightful to me if the undoing of a politician was that he denied the Palestinians' existence, and this very well may be an issue with Gingrich. In other words, it sort of exposed his weakness, that he makes big comments and he doesn't know what he's talking about. It was very hurtful, and I think it was a shameful, shameful comment, and I hope he pays the price for it. That's my personal view, and I'll now turn it over to Allan for any closing words on the topic. Your big prediction is out there.
My big prediction is Obama, and what I tell everybody, therefore, don't worry about electability. Electability doesn't come into play. All you Republicans out there, vote for whoever you believe in and don't try to think who is electable. Democrats went for John Kerry in 2004 because they thought he was electable, but as you know, the keys were lined up against the Democrats. And my advice to Obama, all right, you've got this election wrapped up. Don't pull a Ronald Reagan in 1984. You know, it's morning in America. Run a substantive campaign and build a base for your second term.
Thank you for joining us, Allan Lichtman. When we come back, we're going to get a report from Iraq with the withdrawal of American forces, what it means for the future of the country. We'll be right with you. Right back.